The Deepwater Horizon disaster, a cataclysmic event that unfolded in the Gulf of Mexico, began on the fateful night of April 20th, 2010. This incident would soon spiral into the largest marine oil spill in the history of the petroleum industry, leaving an indelible scar on the environment and the public consciousness. The story is not merely one of mechanical failure, but a complex tapestry of human decisions, corporate culture, and lingering questions of accountability. At the heart of the narrative lies a fierce debate. Was this a tragic case of gross negligence or, as some whisper, an act of deliberate sabotage? The official consensus points overwhelmingly towards a cascade of failures rooted in negligence. Investigations revealed a corporate culture at BP that often prioritized profits and speed over safety and precaution. The project was running significantly behind schedule, costing the company an estimated $1 million for each day of delay. This immense financial pressure created an environment where cutting corners became an accepted, if unspoken, operational standard. A series of critical technical decisions, made in the hours and days leading up to the explosion, are often cited as the primary culprits. The cementing of the well, a crucial step in securing it, was performed inadequately, failing to create a proper seal against the immense pressure from the hydrocarbon reservoir below. Halliburton, the contractor responsible for the cement job, had data suggesting the cement mixture was unstable, yet the work proceeded. Another fateful choice was the decision to displace the heavy drilling mud with lighter seawater in the riser pipe before setting the final cement plug. This reduced the hydrostatic pressure holding back the volatile hydrocarbons, a move that proved to be catastrophic. The blowout preventer, a massive stack of valves sitting on the seafloor, was the ultimate failsafe, designed to sever the drill pipe and seal the well in an emergency. It failed to activate correctly, a mechanical breakdown that represented the last broken link in a long chain of safety compromises. Examinations later revealed that a pair of shear rams within the device were unable to cut through the drill pipe as designed, possibly due to the pipe being buckled under pressure. The negative pressure test, a standard procedure to confirm the integrity of the well, was misinterpreted by the crew on board. Alarms and warning signs, including unusual pressure readings and fluid returns, were either missed, ignored, or rationalized away in the critical moments before the blowout. The narrative of negligence paints a picture of a disaster that was not just foreseeable but actively courted by a series of reckless gambles. Yet, in the shadow of this official story, a darker, more conspiratorial narrative took root. This alternative theory posits that the Deepwater Horizon was not the victim of accident, but of intentional sabotage. Proponents of this view suggest a variety of motives and actors, ranging from corporate espionage to geopolitical maneuvering. Some theories point to a deliberate act intended to cripple BP, a major player in the global energy market. The financial fallout for the company was immense, with its stock value plummeting and costs soaring into the tens of billions of dollars. Such a devastating blow could have been orchestrated by a rival corporation or even a nation-state seeking to gain a competitive advantage. The methods of sabotage proposed are as varied as the alleged motives. One popular theory suggests that an explosive device was used to intentionally damage the blowout preventer, ensuring its failure. Another speculates that the cement job was deliberately compromised by a saboteur on the inside, an agent working for a hostile entity. Complex and highly technical nature of deep-sea drilling operations provides fertile ground for such speculation, as the actions of a single knowledgeable individual could have devastating consequences. The context of global energy politics adds another layer to the sabotage theory. Control over oil resources is a cornerstone of international power, and the Gulf of Mexico is a critical asset in the United States energy portfolio. Some have argued that an attack on the Deepwater Horizon could have been a strategic move to disrupt the American economy and undermine its energy independence. The timing of the event, coinciding with debates on new offshore drilling regulations, has also been flagged as suspicious by some observers. A catastrophic spill could be used to manipulate public opinion and influence policy, either to halt offshore exploration or, conversely, to create a crisis that could be exploited. However, the evidence supporting the sabotage theory remains largely circumstantial and speculative. No credible proof of explosive devices or deliberate tampering has ever been presented in any official investigation. The multiple, well-documented instances of negligence and corner cutting provide a much more direct and evidence-based explanation for the disaster. The sheer number of individual and corporate failings required to align for the blowout to occur makes a simple accident seem almost orchestrated in its own right. It was a perfect storm of human error, mechanical failure, and corporate greed. The story of the response to the spill is also one of struggle and controversy. For 87 agonizing days, oil gushed unabated from the wellhead, a mile below the ocean's surface. The initial efforts to cap the well were fraught with difficulty, as engineers battled the extreme pressures and the darkness of the deep sea. The top hat and junk shot attempts were well-publicized failures, each one deepening the sense of crisis and helplessness. The use of chemical dispersants, particularly Corexit, became a major point of contention. These chemicals were sprayed in unprecedented quantities, both on the surface and directly at the wellhead, to break up the oil into smaller droplets. While this helped to keep some of the oil from reaching the coastline, the long-term ecological effects of the dispersants themselves remain a subject of intense scientific debate. The environmental devastation was staggering. The slick of oil eventually covered thousands of square miles of the Gulf, contaminating sensitive coastal marshes, beaches, and deep-sea ecosystems. Images of oil-soaked birds, dead dolphins, and struggling sea turtles became heartbreaking symbols of the disaster. The fishing and tourism industries, vital to the Gulf Coast economy, were crippled, with livelihoods destroyed overnight. The cleanup effort was a monumental undertaking, involving thousands of workers, a flotilla of vessels, and miles of containment boom. But it was a battle against an overwhelming tide, a desperate attempt to mitigate a catastrophe that was already out of control. The long-term health effects on cleanup workers and coastal residents exposed to the oil and dispersants are still being studied, with many reporting chronic respiratory problems and other ailments. The legal and financial aftermath of the spill was equally immense. BP was faced with a barrage of lawsuits from individuals, businesses, and government entities. The company ultimately agreed to a settlement that included billions of dollars in fines, compensation payments, and funding for environmental restoration projects. Several BP and Halliburton employees faced criminal charges, though the highest-ranking executives largely avoided personal legal responsibility. The disaster served as a brutal wake-up call for the oil industry and its regulators. It exposed critical weaknesses in safety protocols, drilling technology, and emergency response capabilities. In the years since, new regulations have been implemented, aimed at preventing a similar catastrophe from ever happening again. These include stricter standards for well design, blowout preventers, and workplace safety. Yet, the question of whether the fundamental culture of the industry has changed remains open. The relentless pressure to drill deeper and in more challenging environments continues, driven by the world's insatiable demand for energy. The memory of the Deepwater Horizon serves as a constant, grim reminder of the risks involved. It underscores the razor-thin margin for error when operating at the extremes of human technological capability. The narrative of sabotage, while lacking hard evidence, persists because it speaks to a deeper unease, reflects a public distrust of powerful corporations and government institutions, a sense that the official story is never the whole story. It taps into a fear that in the high-stakes game of global energy, there are hidden players and secret rules. Whether born of negligence or malice, the result was the same: a torrent of black crude that poisoned a sea, shattered lives, and left a legacy of environmental and economic pain. The debate over the cause may never be fully resolved in the public mind, becoming part of the disaster's complex and tragic mythology. The truth, as is often the case, may be a messy combination of both narratives. The systemic negligence created the vulnerability, the perfect environment for a single point of failure, accidental or otherwise, to trigger a complete collapse. The disaster was not a single event, but the culmination of 1,000 small cuts to safety and integrity. Each compromised decision, each ignored warning, was a step closer to the abyss. The final push could have been a simple mechanical flaw, or something more sinister. In the end, the distinction matters less than the outcome. The well itself was a scene of immense geological violence, a high-pressure battle between human technology and the Earth's raw power. The failure of that technology unleashed a force that was beyond our capacity to control. The men on the rig were the first victims, 11 lives lost in the initial explosion and fire. Their story is often overshadowed by the environmental catastrophe that followed, but their loss is a stark reminder of the human cost of the disaster. Fire on the rig burned for over a day, a colossal pillar of smoke and flame visible for miles. The eventual sinking of the massive platform was a dramatic and symbolic moment, the final surrender of human artifice to the forces it had unleashed. The discovery that the well was still leaking after the rig sank transformed the event from a tragic accident into a prolonged environmental crisis. The underwater cameras that broadcast the leak live to the world created a powerful and disturbing image, a real-time portrait of an ecosystem being poisoned. The oil that rose to the surface was just one part of the problem. Vast underwater plumes of dispersed oil spread through the deep ocean, their ecological impact still not fully understood. The damage to deep-sea coral communities, ancient and slow-growing ecosystems, was particularly severe and may be irreversible. The spill highlighted the interconnectedness of the Gulf ecosystem, showing how an event in the deep ocean could have devastating consequences for coastal habitats hundreds of miles away. The economic ripple effects were felt across the country, impacting everything from seafood prices to the national energy policy. The disaster forced a national conversation about the risks and rewards of offshore drilling. It raised profound questions about corporate responsibility, regulatory oversight, and our collective dependence on fossil fuels. The story of the Deepwater Horizon is a cautionary tale for the 21st century, a story of technological hubris and its consequences. It is a reminder that our most advanced creations are still vulnerable to failure, and that the pursuit of resources can come at a terrible cost. The slick on the water has long since dissipated, and the beaches have been cleaned, but the deeper impacts of the spill remain. Toxins linger in the sediment and the food web, a persistent poison working its way through the ecosystem. The trust that was broken, trust in corporations, in government, in technology, has been slow to heal. The search for the secret truth of the Deepwater Horizon continues, not in official reports, but in the lingering questions and the quiet anxieties of those who live by the Gulf. It is a truth found in the stories of the fishermen who lost their livelihoods, the scientists who study the long-term damage, and the children who will inherit a changed and wounded sea. The disaster is not just a historical event, it is an ongoing story, its final chapters yet to be written. The ultimate lesson may be one of humility, a recognition of the limits of our knowledge and control. In the deep, dark waters of the Gulf, we were reminded that there are forces in nature that we do not fully understand and cannot always contain. The black plume was a symbol of our failure, a stark and undeniable manifestation of a system that broke down on every level. The debate between sabotage and negligence may ultimately be a distraction from this more fundamental truth. It is a way of seeking a simple villain in a story where the culpability is broad and systemic. The real secret of the Deepwater Horizon may not be a hidden conspiracy, but the open secret that our entire industrial society is balanced on a knife's edge of risk. The disaster revealed the fragility of that balance and the catastrophic price of failure. The memory of the fire, the oil, and the dying wildlife serves as a permanent warning. It is a call for greater vigilance, greater responsibility, and a deeper respect for the powerful and fragile world we inhabit. The story is a stark reminder that every decision has a consequence, and some consequences are too great to bear. Final truth is written in the altered ecology of the Gulf and the changed lives of its people. It is a truth that cannot be contained in a single report or a simple explanation. It is as vast, as deep, and as dark as the oil that once flowed from the broken well. The event forced a re-evaluation of the term fail-safe, proving that even the most robust systems can be defeated by a combination of human error and unforeseen circumstances. The psychological impact on the communities along the Gulf Coast was profound, with widespread reports of anxiety, depression, and stress. The spill was not just an environmental and economic disaster, but a public health crisis as well. The intricate dance of legal battles that followed highlighted the difficulty of assigning ultimate blame in a multi-layered system of contractors and subcontractors. Each company sought to shift responsibility, creating a complex web of accusations and denials. The media coverage itself became part of the story, shaping public perception and driving the political narrative. The 24/7 news cycle amplified the sense of crisis and created immense pressure on both BP and the US government to act. The disaster also became a case study in crisis communication, with BP's public relations efforts widely criticized as inadequate and insensitive. The infamous quote from BP's CEO, "I'd like my life back," became a symbol of corporate detachment from the human and environmental suffering. The scientific response to the spill was unprecedented, mobilizing thousands of researchers to study its impact. This resulted in a massive increase in our understanding of deep-sea ecosystems and the behavior of oil in the marine environment. However, this knowledge came at the cost of a real-world, uncontrolled experiment on a massive scale. The development of new technologies for capping wells and cleaning up spills was accelerated by the disaster. The crisis spurred innovation in a field that had seen little advancement in decades. The story of the whistleblowers who tried to raise alarms about safety concerns before the disaster adds another layer of tragedy to the narrative. Their warnings went unheeded, lost in a corporate hierarchy that was not receptive to bad news. The disaster's impact on the global insurance and reinsurance markets was significant, leading to a reassessment of risk for large-scale industrial projects. The political fallout included a temporary moratorium on new deepwater drilling permits in the United States. This move was controversial, with some arguing it was a necessary precaution and others claiming it would harm the economy. The event also sparked renewed interest in renewable energy and a broader debate about transitioning away from fossil fuels. For many, the spill was a clear sign that the environmental costs of our energy consumption had become unsustainable. The restoration efforts funded by the settlement money are among the largest environmental restoration projects ever undertaken. They represent a long-term commitment to healing the damaged Gulf ecosystem, a process that will take decades. The disaster highlighted the vulnerability of our critical energy infrastructure to both accidents and potential attacks. It raised national security concerns that went beyond the immediate environmental and economic impacts. The cultural impact of the spill can be seen in documentaries, books, and even works of art that have sought to capture the scale and meaning of the event. The story has become a modern fable about the dangers of unchecked corporate power and technological overreach. The question of whether justice was truly served remains a matter of perspective. While significant fines were paid, many feel that the individuals and corporate culture responsible for the disaster were not held fully accountable. The Deepwater Horizon will forever be a name synonymous with environmental catastrophe. It stands as a monument to a failure of foresight, a failure of responsibility, and a failure of stewardship. The echoes of the explosion on that April night continue to reverberate in the science, the politics, and the collective memory of a nation. The deep sea holds its secrets close, and the full story of the Deepwater Horizon may never be known. The line between a catastrophic mistake and a deliberate act can be vanishingly thin. The narrative of negligence is compelling and well supported by evidence of a flawed safety culture. The sabotage theory, while lacking a smoking gun, speaks to a deep-seated distrust of power. Ultimately, the disaster was a product of a system that prioritized production over protection. The pressure to drill faster and cheaper created a fertile ground for disaster, regardless of the specific trigger. The event was a brutal lesson in the concept of systemic risk, where multiple small failures can combine to create a catastrophe. The legacy of the Deepwater Horizon is one of loss, but also one of learning. The disaster forced a painful but necessary reckoning with the true costs of our energy addiction. The images from 2010 are a permanent part of our history, a visual record of a moment when a pillar of fire gave way to a sea of darkness. The story is a reminder that the pursuit of progress without precaution is a path to ruin. The final, secret truth may be that the disaster was not an anomaly, but an inevitability in a system that had lost its way. The Gulf of Mexico paid the price for a series of choices made in boardrooms and on drilling platforms far from its shores. The recovery of the Gulf is a testament to the resilience of nature, but the scars of 2010 remain. The debate over what truly happened will likely continue, a ghost that haunts the waters of the Gulf. The story of the Deepwater Horizon is a story about oil, but it is also a story about us. It is about our choices, our values, and the world we are creating for ourselves. The disaster was a moment of clarity, a glimpse into the abyss that lies beneath our modern industrial world. The final sentence in this long and tragic story is one of warning. We forget these lessons at our own peril. The truth is not a secret to be found, but a lesson to be learned, over and over again. The spill was a symptom of a larger disease, a global addiction that drives us to ever greater risks. The memory of the Deepwater Horizon must serve as a constant check on our own hubris. The story is not over, and the final verdict of history has yet to be delivered. The deep waters of the Gulf continue to whisper their tales of what happened in the dark. The truth is out there, scattered in the currents and buried in the sediment. And it is a truth that we must continue to seek, for our own sake. The disaster was a wake-up call that we cannot afford to ignore. The future of our planet depends on it. The story of the Deepwater Horizon is a story of our time. It is a story of power, greed, and the fragility of life. And it is a story that we must never forget. The end of one chapter is just the beginning of another in the long saga of humanity's relationship with the Earth. The final truth is that we are all connected, and the choices we make have consequences that ripple across the globe. The Deepwater Horizon was a stark reminder of that fundamental reality. And in that reminder lies the most important secret of all. The story's a mirror, reflecting our own vulnerabilities and our own capacity for both destruction and redemption. The final truth is not a destination, but a journey of understanding and change. And that journey is far from over.